Right. Let's unpack this. We're jumping straight into a situation where a very public clash between two incredibly powerful figures has, well, maybe unintentionally, shone a light into some unexpected corners.
Yeah, and our source material for this deep dive, it's a video analysis that really takes apart the recent events and the statements surrounding this conflict.
Right.
Yeah.
And this analysis, it digs into specific allegations that surfaced, the official responses to them.
And crucially, what the source suggests might really be happening behind the scenes, possibly, out of public view.
So our mission here is basically to pull out the most important insights, the key nuggets of knowledge from this analysis for you.
Okay, so the analysis we looked at frames this very publicly as something like, a civil war between Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
A civil war, yeah, that's quite the framing.
And it's this very public fight that, according to the analysis, brought a specific and pretty serious allegation right back into the spotlight.
Which was?
That was Elon Musk's post claiming that Donald Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files.
Okay, and the analysis points out this wasn't just like a random tweet from Musk, right?
No, not at all. It was apparently a direct response to an MSNBC video.
Yeah.
One that focused specifically on Donald Trump's past relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Ah, okay. So there's context there.
Definitely. And the analysis describes this MSNBC video in quite a bit of detail. It shows footage from way back in November 1992, filmed at Mar-a-Lago.
1992. Okay.
Yeah. And it captures Trump with Epstein and quite specifically surrounded by Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins cheerleaders. And the conversation, well, as reported in the analysis, involved discussions about women. The original footage apparently was shot for a segment on an old NBC talk show.
And the analysis highlights a particular detail from that footage description, doesn't it? Something quite striking.
It does. It mentions Trump pointing out a woman to Epstein and another man reportedly saying something like, "Look at her back there, she's hot."
Oh.
And then apparently whispering something into Epstein's ear that reportedly made Epstein laugh.
Okay. So this relationship wasn't exactly secret before now.
No. And the analysis we reviewed acknowledges that. Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, it's been a known thing for some time.
But there's a but, I sense.
There is. The analysis is quite critical of Musk's timing in bringing this specific allegation up right now. And it really questions his motivation.
How so?
It describes it basically as sour grapes, suggesting Musk is only highlighting this while he's fighting Trump.
Right. Like it's convenient now.
Exactly. And maybe trying to position himself as some kind of hero, even though the analysis claims he knew about the relationship before and had actually supported Trump previously.
Okay. So even with that sort of critique of the players involved, the analysis still makes a point about why this public fight matters to us, the public.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think. The analysis uses this powerful analogy, picturing two tarantulas in a bowl.
Okay. Two tarantulas.
The point they're making is when the most powerful figure in government publicly clashes with one of the richest people globally, the public gets this rare, maybe uncomfortable, but important look deep inside what the analysis calls the most corrupt and superficial alliance in American political history.
So the fight itself reveals things.
That's the idea. Both figures, through their conflict, end up exposing some of the, let's say, less flattering parts of themselves and each other.
And the analysis notes this exposure reaches not just the general public.
Critically, it penetrates into the AMGA audience, too, an audience who, the analysis suggests, are often sort of shielded from or maybe ignore these specific elements.
Right, okay. So moving on from that very, very visible conflict, the situation obviously needed some kind of official response.
It did. And according to the analysis, Donald Trump himself didn't take any questions from the press on this.
So the job fell to someone else?
Yeah, his press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt. She was the one directly confronted about the Epstein scandal bubbling up again in this context.
And the analysis flags a specific moment there.
Yes. It highlights an exchange where CNN's Caitlin Collins asked Leavitt, point blank.
Straight up.
Yeah. Asked if Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files, and maybe even more sharply, if that's the reason why those files aren't being released by the White House.
Oof. That's a direct question. What was the answer?
Well, the analysis gives Leavitt's exact response. She said, and I'm quoting what the source reported, "This is an unfortunate episode from Elon, who is unhappy with the one big beautiful bill because it does not include the policies he wanted. The president is focused on passing this historic piece of legislation and making our country great again."
Okay. That doesn't sound like a direct answer to the question asked.
Not really, no.
Yeah.
And the analysis interpretation here is pretty stark.
What do they make of it?
They labeled it a clear deflection, and they go further, suggesting it acts almost like an admission of guilt simply by not answering the core question.
An admission through silence, almost.
Sort of. The analysis argues this response is effectively throwing Donald Trump on the bus, because it just completely sidesteps that direct query about his potential presence in the Epstein files. And the analysis explicitly states the White House has been, their word, terrified of being asked this specific question for a long time.
And they connect this back to Musk.
They do. The analysis connects the significance of this deflection back to Musk's huge platform, noting his enormous social media following is, well, predominantly used by Republicans.
Yeah, so the deflection, the non-answer, gets seen by Trump's own base.
Precisely. The analysis suggests this very specific issue. The Epstein question and the White House's non-answer became highly visible directly to an audience that might not otherwise encounter it, or perhaps dismiss it from other sources.
Right, so the public spectacle, even if messy, forces the issue into the light for everyone.
Exactly. It shows how these, high-profile conflicts, even if driven by personal stuff, can make certain topics unavoidable.
Okay. Now, the analysis we reviewed also floats the idea that while this public drama grabs all the headlines,
It could potentially be a distraction.
a distraction from other things.
Yeah, from other significant actions happening, maybe more quietly, less in the spotlight.
What kind of actions?
Well, the analysis mentions one potential distraction related to healthcare policy, but the other significant issue raised, which the analysis highlights through comments from Congressman Dan Goldman, is the creation of what sounds like a massive database.
A database? Of what?
Containing the data of potentially, well, every American.
Okay, that sounds significant. How did this come about, according to the analysis?
Well, it traces back to an executive order issued by Donald Trump back in March. An order they say was designed to increase the sharing of unclassified data between various federal agencies.
So different government departments sharing data more freely.
That seems to be the gist. Then, drawing on a New York Times report from May, the analysis notes that Palantir, the private tech company.
Oh, Palantir, okay.
Yes, they were specifically employed to carry out this executive order. Their job, as described, is essentially to consolidate and merge data from these various executive branch agencies.
Into one single database.
That's what the analysis suggests based on the reporting.
And the scale of this? Did the analysis give any details?
It did, referencing another NYT article. And this is where it gets quite concerning, according to the source. It suggests this database could consolidate as many as 314 different points of data.
314 points.
About every single American. All managed by a private company, Palantir.
Wow. Okay, that immediately raises questions.
Big ones. As Congressman Goldman pointed out, according to the analysis, there's a real lack of clarity around who ultimately controls this massive database.
Like who gets access?
Exactly. Who has access? What kinds of searches can even be done within it? And apparently there's an absence of clear guardrails or, proper oversight.
And surely there's a security risk.
A huge one. The analysis underscores that concern, also raised by Goldman, creating a single consolidated database holding sensitive information about pretty much everyone in the country.
Makes it a massive target.
A prime target, yeah. For sophisticated hackers, maybe state actors like China or Russia, for example, it's putting all the eggs in one very, very tempting basket.
And the analysis brings up a point about consistency here, doesn't it? Regarding surveillance concerns.
It does. It presents this compelling contrast that Congressman Goldman drew. He apparently compared this situation to previous concerns expressed by figures like Subcommittee Chairman Biggs about government surveillance.
So the question becomes...
The question the analysis poses, based on Goldman's point, is essentially, if you're genuinely worried about government surveillance powers, why is there seemingly no oversight, or at least not enough visible oversight, on Palantir's contracts for this specific project? And on the consolidation of all this sensitive American data by a private entity?
It's a fair question. So, okay, let's pull these threads together. We've gone from this very public, almost theatrical civil war between powerful figures.
Right, which resurfaced a specific long-standing allegation.
Leading to an official response that the analysis calls a deflection.
And then, peeling back a layer, we see this potentially huge policy action, the creation of this vast database, possibly happening somewhat under the radar, as the analysis suggests.
So the core insight here from the source material seems to be about how information works in these power plays.
Yeah, I think so. How it gets revealed, sometimes accidentally,
Right.
how it's strategically deflected or ignored, and how really significant actions might be potentially hidden or at least obscured by the noise of public conflict.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. In an age absolutely saturated with information, constant updates, and so much public spectacle, how do you, the listener, actually figure out what's genuinely important? Or maybe what's being strategically kept out of the spotlight? What stands out most to you from this whole deep dive?